Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clockedin with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest here today. We have Bruce B. Miller. He's passionate about helping people grow, developing leaders, and empowering churches. Embodying an entrepreneurial spirit, in 1997, Miller helped found Christ Fellowship in McKinney, Texas, a church which he continues to serve as the senior pastor today. Miller's passions inspire him to write books intended to foster personal growth and provide fresh insights into how people can live more productive, joy-filled lives that make an internal difference. He has currently written 10 books, including Leading a Church in Times of Sexual Questioning, from Thomas Nelson under the Leadership Network Next series, and his most recent book, The 7 Big Questions, Searching for God, Truth, and Purpose, which came out October 4th, 2022. Miller has been married to his wife, Tamara, since 1983, and together they have blessed with 5 adult children and 9 grandchildren. Wow.
Crazy.
Bruce, how are you doing today?
We have a full life, man. It is a full life.
Yeah, that's the most important. And it's incredible how you were able to configure it and bring it all together. So where did this start for you, Bruce?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I'm still in the Metroplex. McKinney is just north of Dallas, about 30 miles. And, grew up in this area. And, my parents, when I was early in my life, were not really following Christ seriously. They're sort of religious, but not serious about it. And most of the area that I grew up in was there were more Jewish people in our community. My high school teasingly was called Hebrew High.
Oh, wow. Wow. So where did you get this lust for becoming a pastor? Where did that journey
early
start?
on in my life, I had an encounter with God that was just undeniable for me. And I just can't even really explain it, but God just imparted in me a faith in Jesus Christ that I've never really deviated from, and I've just had intense experiences with God and really wrestled even as a teenager with my purpose in life. What's this all about? And I'm sure some of that was just sort of normal adolescent stuff, but it's pretty deep for me. And made a commitment to say, hey, not that I'm going to be a pastor, but I'm going to live for God. I'm going to live for Christ. That's my whole life. That's what life's about. And then later in college, went to the University of Texas in Austin, Longhorns. And there we go. We at that point, looking at graduate school, it was looking at an MBA, JD, or seminary. And somewhere in there, I'm like, you know what? I really think this is what I'm supposed to do. And now years later, I couldn't imagine doing something else. I just love doing what I get to do to really help people to encounter God and grow in their relationship with God.
Wow. Yeah, I noticed that you did a ton of schooling. And what made you go in that path?
Yeah,
so
I love learning, love all that. I've done a lot of philosophy kind of stuff and all of that. And so I'm sort of a pastor theologian, and I'm interested in the truth. I really want to go after what's real, what's true. And, been an academic guy. I taught theology at a graduate level for a few years as a professor, but I really love people, and I really love leading a group of people to do something important. And so for me, being a professor just wasn't it, although I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
But being a pastor, I'm able to build long-lasting relationships with people and to rally people to in this moment in our community make a difference in our city, helping people, really improving the well-being of our community.
Yeah. And that's one of the most impressive things that I've been seeing about you and just different spiritual heads, because these people are the ones that are really fostering the community and building something great. Like I noticed in your book, it was the mayor and it was someone from the school, someone very high up in the school, who wrote your like kind of letters of recommendation, like saying that Bruce is a great guy. Like Bruce is, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, you really had an impact on the community as a whole. It's not just living life and being like, oh, I'm Bruce and I got to make enough money to have my family be happy. Like, what was that for you?
Yeah, it's when I came to McKinney 26 years ago, I said, look, I want to be involved. And I met with the leaders of the community, mayor, city manager, police chief, superintendent of schools, and said, hey, what are the real needs in McKinney? Like how could our church help? And then years later, we got back together because, stuff changes over 20 years to say, hey, what are the current needs? And then when COVID happened, they called me and said, hey, we need to get together and rally the community to respond to and recover from COVID. And so we got basically the leaders of the city, both political, nonprofit, business, church, and met on a week. And the city manager led it on a weekly Zoom call. And it made a massive difference in our city, from everywhere from getting masks to providing food for people, housing, vaccinations, and supporting our school teachers who were just getting killed during COVID, trying to do online and in person and all that. Anyway, we called it One Heart McKinney. And now we said we got to continue this, because what it did, it's one of the few good things that came out of COVID, is that we built relational equity, we built trust with each other. And so we said, let's continue this to unite our community for the well-being of the community and unite all the sectors. By that, I mean the city government, the police, the fire, the business community through the Chamber of Commerce, the nonprofits, the church, the media. And so it's happened. It's all come together. And somehow in the midst of all that, with, people's encouragement, I'm the chairman of the board of that. And it's an honor to be involved and to serve our community.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, it's one of the most powerful things you can do. Is you don't have to do it on the city level. You don't have to do it on the state level. You don't have to do it in these big levels, but to get a community of people who are all doing something different than you allows you to get those other perspectives and see how you can really help each other. It's a mastermind on steroids.
And, the joy of helping other people, it's always more blessed to give than to receive, and to help other people and then learn from them. I mean, I'm being challenged, I'm growing in relating with people who are different than I am.
Yeah. And that must have been such a great experience, being able to work on a unified thing that's not, hey, we need to highlight the church today, or we need to highlight my business today, or it's like, no, we need to work together as a community to help the team. Like, it's very, very different. It's a paradigm switch, that it's not, hey, what's in it for me, but it's how can I help?
And I have a heart for people who are on the margins, and we have a lot to learn from people on the margins, and we need to protect them and be sure that they're treated in a just way, whoever is on the margins in your community or whatever place and space you live in. And so when you talked about the mayor of our city, Mayor George Fuller contacted me because he made a pride declaration in June, and he was getting attacked by, frankly, Christian people. And he said, Bruce, how do I handle this? Like, what do I do? And so I walked through some ways to respond. There was a city council meeting that night. He was concerned he'd get some Bible verses lobbed at him in an unkind way. And so wrote up some stuff for him just to be able to handle that in a way that would be gracious, but appropriate in his position, because he should stand up for all the citizens of our community, and everyone, whoever they are, straight, gay, whatever, deserve to be using the parks and having a job and engaging in the community, no matter who you are. And so that was helpful to him. And I was glad to be a part of assisting him in caring for all the people of our community across our various differences of all kinds, whether that's ethnic, economic, or some kind of belief too.
Yeah, I love that, because it's really helping a few people so that the many can be happy in a way, which we don't realize the impact that we have. Like you having that one conversation with him changes his whole outlook, and now he can impact 1,000 more people in a positive manner. And to you, it's just a one-on-one conversation. But if you realize that each of these conversations are much bigger than, hey, like I just got him motivated today, that was it. The reality of things is most people are going to speak with other people. So they'll impact others. And if we can have everyone in a positive manner, changes the whole dynamic.
It matters to speak up and to say something and to stand up for someone who's being treated unfairly. Whether that's anti-Semitism, which we sadly still in the news in the last few weeks, or a lot of people don't know that the population, even more than Jewish people, more than some other categories, more than African Americans, is the LGBTQ community is the most prejudiced against or most treated unfairly across the United States at the moment, most likely to be the victim of some sort of a hate crime.
Oh, wow. Elaborate on that, because I know you were writing about that as well.
Everywhere from slurs, some kind of an ugly verbal statement, to someone who doesn't want them to be in their apartment or doesn't want to hire them, or frankly, flat out physically, they're at a party, they're at a club, they're at a bar, and someone punches them in the face. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. Even to the level of family that son or a daughter comes out to mom or dad and says, look, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, I'm whatever, and parents kicking them out of their house. That still happens. The population of the homeless population of students, people under 18, the highest percentage is LGBTQ kids in terms of homeless youth.
I had no idea. And this is why I think it's important, because as we go through conversations, we might not know each side. We might not understand everything, but it's asking the questions to learn on, like, how can someone help this? Or how can we do this? Because I didn't even know about this. Yeah.
To me, it's rising above whatever our beliefs or thoughts or feelings are to go, hey, this is another human being. And maybe I don't agree with their politics or their whatever, but look, somebody's hurting. Somebody's in trouble. They're homeless. They're suicidal. They're struggling. They're, in our case, in the city with what I was talking about before, the One Heart McKinney, it's people, there's currently a housing crisis. Most of all the funds that were generated through COVID for housing, rent and utilities have dried up. So across the country right now, there are people getting kicked out of their apartments. Rents are being raised by whoever owns the apartment complex, just like suddenly, okay, your rent's now $500 or $1,000 more. And you're like, well, I can't pay that. And so there's not a good way to address it, but if you're interested in helping across the country right now, that would be a need that is probably in most communities, certainly most major communities, is that housing is an issue today when it was not an issue 6 months ago.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that with Tampa. Yeah. I think Tampa had the highest inflation, where it was 11%.
Seriously, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they had them by cities, and it was very interesting. And the thing is, like you're exactly saying, if you don't have, like, there's two sides of the coin, right? It's I'm the real estate investor, and I'm like, dude, we got a sweet deal. We're going to raise rents. We're going to make more money. We're going to cash flow. Incredible. And that's what I think a good amount of people see. A lot of people don't see the other side of, hey, we can't afford this. Yeah, and there's limited viable options. Like, that's right. People are making $100,000 and barely getting by.
And if you're living on the margins and maybe you're paid by the hour and you get sick and you don't work for a week, you may not be able to pay your rent that month because you missed a quarter of a month's income. You miss a week, you don't get paid, you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough. And it's definitely a difficult idea. Like, people don't realize how close it is for a lot of people. And one of the things I was interested in is I know you have this new book, The 7 Big Questions.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
And what caused you to write this? What was the origins of that?
You know, a guy, a friend of mine, did some research on the internet. He built a big company, sold it, and thought, what do I do? And he said, what are the questions people are asking about God, spirituality, faith? And he's got some tech. His company was a tech company, and he researched what are the number one questions being asked by people on the internet, Google, YouTube, whatever, about faith, spirituality, and God. And these were the 7 questions. And so I thought, hey, these are the questions that are on people's minds around the world, and we need to talk about them. And yet I find that while people, maybe in a quiet moment at night, these questions cross their mind, or they're, going to put it in a search engine, a lot of times we dodge it. Like, we really don't even want to think about it or talk about it, because it's either it's controversial, we don't want to talk about it, or for ourselves, we're scared of the answers. We're scared maybe there's not an answer.
Yeah. And a lot of these questions, I know we're not going to have enough time to go through all of them,
Sure.
but just to give a big perspective for the group, the questions are, does life have a purpose? That's number 1. Number 2, is there a God? 3, why does God allow pain and suffering? 4, is Christianity too narrow? 5, is Jesus God? 6, is the Bible reliable? And 7, can I know God personally? Which are all profound questions. You don't just, it's very different than how's your day going?
Exactly. How's the weather? How's the football team doing? And sometimes you may not have all 7 questions, but 1 or 2 of them might really be something that's bugging you, or that you want to know. And so I found you don't have to read the whole book. Grab the book and read the chapter that is meaningful to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was reviewing this and kind of prepping for this podcast, the one that was really interesting to me, that like when I saw this, I was just kind of putting it all together. Does life have a purpose?
Yeah.
Because we sit there and we ask this, and actually in the book, I'm going to take a little excerpt from it, and it just hits it right up. It's funny because when you're reading the book, it's the thoughts you have right away. Like, you would ask these questions and then you answer them. And I'm like, I was going to ask you that, but you gave the answer. And it's this whole idea of like, when we're growing up, this is the excerpt. You go to high school hoping to get into college. You graduate hoping to get a job. You get married hoping to have kids, just to send them off to school. Then you get old and die. What's the point? I can only speak for myself, but I have had that moment where I think, what is the point? Like, what are we really doing this for? Who is there to help? Like, does it matter if you make $1 million? Does it matter if you make $15? Like, what's the point of all this? Is everything meaningless or everything purposeful? Like, it's a very interesting questions we have. And I kind of wanted to see what your thoughts on that
Yeah,
are.
that's what we made it the first question, because man, I see people wrestling with this. Just the excerpt you read, and then when people get there, it's like there's this hope that, well, maybe when I go to college, I'll find some meaning, or maybe when I get married, or get my first like real job, or make X amount of money, whatever X is, or have a kid, and then it happens, and you're like, okay, that wasn't it. Like, I made 6 figures. I had a baby. I bought a house, whatever, and it doesn't do it, because that doesn't provide the real purpose of the satisfaction. Or then I find other people, it's moments of crisis. Everything's falling apart. You get really sick. Maybe you have long-term COVID, long haul COVID, and you're like,
Yeah.
what's the point if I'm just feeling this way? Or, that's some tragedy. And the other one is just frankly, the boringness of life. It's like, oh my gosh, I just get up and do the same thing every day, like Groundhog Day, that movie, and it's like it's the same day over and over again. And what is the point? I get up and have some breakfast, or get my coffee, drive to work, or go to my office in the room next door at my house, and I work all day, and I eat some food and watch some TV and wake up and do it again. Like, what is this all about? It feels like it's about nothing.
Yeah. And I've had thoughts on 2 of those instances where it's the boredom, and then it's like, what's the point of this? And what came to me was really like, just through my life, I realized that if I don't fill up my day, it's not going to be interesting. So, like, example, this podcast is exciting for me because we're having a conversation, we're learning about different topics, we're having a discussion. And that's a highlight of my day. Another thing that came to me is that when we talk about progress, we usually focus on the achievement, right? So it's, hey, you bought the house. Congrats, man. That's incredible. What about the process of like going to each open house and finding something? Because if we can fall in love with that process, and this has just been it for me, if we can fall in love with that process, then we don't have that much attachment to the outcome. Because when we're attaching our happiness to the outcome and it doesn't appear, it's a sad game, because you really sit there and go, what's the point?
Right.
And if the point's helping more people or whatever it is, it's a very interesting paradigm.
And sometimes we keep thinking there's got to be something else that's going to give me the happiness, the meaning, the purpose. Maybe it's the process. Maybe it's not the product or the end result, like you said, but it's going to the open houses, or maybe it's helping somebody else, something, whatever it might be. Maybe it's not achievement. Maybe it's, and so we try a variety of things, and we think, yeah, if I only could try this one, this would make me happy. If I could go on this vacation, if I could marry this person, make this amount of money. And a lot of people don't know there's this book in the Bible that's really all about purpose called Ecclesiastes, kind of a big mouthful word. It's in what the Christians call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, written in Hebrew originally. Most people think the author is Solomon, maybe. We don't know for sure. But he was, in his day, the most powerful man in the world, the richest man in the world. And so he tried it all. Like he bought everything you could buy. He had tried every kind of pleasure you can experience, had more money than he needed. And he said it's all meaningless. It's all chasing after the wind. It doesn't have any meaning.
Yeah. So what do you think people can do to find that purpose and find that joy in their life?
Yeah, I think Solomon gives a couple of hints in Ecclesiastes. He has this phrase throughout the book that you may not notice at first. It's under the sun, under the sun. And what he means is on this earth, in this life, under the sun, right here in this life, on this planet. Yeah, there's not meaning. There's ultimately nothing really fully satisfies the internal feeling like there's got to be something more. He has this interesting phrase in this poem he writes in chapter 3. It's a famous poem about a time for this and a time for that. He says, God has set eternity in our hearts. You're like, well, what is that? God has placed eternity in our hearts. And it's this internal sense there's got to be something more than just this life. There's got to be something more than just the like the quote you wrote, just go to school, go to work, get a job, And the hint is, yeah, there is something more than what's under the sun. And so the hint is we got to look above the sun. There's got to be something above the sun, meaning looking toward God, looking toward the next life. Like if your frame is only this earth, this short lifespan, you're probably not going to really find genuine, deep, long-lasting purpose.
Interesting. But if you look for more and you expand your time horizon,
right?
Because it's interesting. And this might be on it or might be off it. I'm not sure. But one of the reasons I like this podcast and like this format is because even if something happens to me or you, this conversation is kind of concrete. Like it's right. Kept forever. It's a brick. Like you post it on the internet. Granted, the internet is a fairly new thing. So who knows if the internet will be gone.
I'm so honored you invited me on, and I love the heart that you have behind this podcast, and really the interesting curiosity in people and ideas and learning something new. And I find that refreshing. A lot of people are kind of stuck in whatever their current way of thinking is on whatever it is, religion, politics, life, and they're not willing to look at new ideas and reconsider what they've thought. But I think it's healthy to ask questions and listen to other people's ideas and be willing to change your mind.
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things I found from this experience is that you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything, but the more people you speak with and the more perspectives you have, the more you'll understand. And I even use this with like traveling as well. Like when people, I went to there was a speaker on Tuesday, and he was talking about this idea about how he traveled to 90 countries and 50 different states. And he was just saying how people will say something about like an instance of like, there's issues in Ukraine and Russia right now. Who's ever been to Ukraine and Russia? Like who's been to who's experienced this? Who's boots on the ground? And a lot of the time we don't give ourselves enough I view it as life experiences,
right?
Because like like it's very interesting, because if you don't have these experiences, then you can't know exactly what's going on there. Like, about McKinney, Texas. Like, you've been there, you're boots on the ground, you're helping the churches, you're helping the people, you're helping the areas. Now, if they asked about another part of Texas, you could probably assist. You'd probably understand what's going on. But if you ask about Washington, D.C., what's going on with them, it's a new dynamic. You might have to go check it out. And I think opening your eyes to these different areas. And one of the biggest things that you brought up to me was not being afraid to ask the question.
That's right.
Like I sit here on this call and I'm like, I don't know some of the stuff we're talking about. I know some of the other stuff. So let me act silly and be like, what does that mean? And that's okay.
And I don't have all the answers. And this book, what's a little different about this book is it's not saying, oh, here's the answer. 1, 2, 3. See, I'm right. You're wrong. Believe this. It's saying, hey, let's explore. I don't have all the answers. I'm asking questions. I've still got questions. But I really think that these 7 questions are worth exploring. They're worth asking the questions, and it's worth saying, okay, let's just be honest. It's going to take some courage to ask these questions, and it's going to take some intentionality, because it's not like you said, it's not like the question of what have I got to do at work tomorrow, and I've got to answer this email, and I've got to make food for my kids and get them off to school and whatever. Though you got to do all that. But man, we need to ask these deeper questions, or else we're never going to really have a meaningful life.
Yeah. And for me, sometimes that meaningful life, I found from just talking to different people, it can come from, there was a guy I met when I went to, we're in Tampa, Florida. I'm in Tampa, Florida. And that's really close to Hurricane Ian that was coming our direction. And we ended up going to Fort Myers.
Okay.
It ended up veering off and it hit Fort Myers. And I told my girlfriend, I'm like, hey, like, we should definitely go to Fort Myers. Like, let's go buy some stuff from Publix and we'll go and we'll donate and it'll be good. And we did that. But then we realized it was a distribution center. You weren't really giving to the people. You didn't feel it. So I'm like, okay, let's volunteer for an hour or two. So we volunteered for 2 hours. And these guys were there were these 2 chefs, and they were cooking hour after hour. It's hot, it's the sun, and everything's there. And I'm like, he came over to me and he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, I'm just volunteering for a little bit. I wanted to help. And he goes, when I went to Kentucky last year or the year before, when the tornadoes were coming through, he goes, I have never experienced community and change and really felt that value unless a moment like that. So then he goes, when Fort Myers came up, and I go, I don't have a bunch of money in my bank account. Like, I need to help them somehow. He goes, he's like, we literally snatched the oven onto the truck. We drove and we're here. And I'm like, how long are you going to be here? And he goes, until we can't support it anymore. And I was like, all right, here's another $50. Like, I just donated, because I'm like, and this is not a millionaire. This is not someone, it's someone donating their time. And I'm like, the value you're providing is exponentially more than someone who might have distributed products around the world or did something. Like, we have to realize that impact can happen from anyone. It can be from someone who's the cook, someone who's the chef, someone who's the podcaster, someone who's the preacher. It can happen from anywhere. It can be the school teacher. You just have to view yourself in that area and have those experiences, and not be married to, I'm a teacher and now I'm a teacher for life, or I'm this and now I'm this for life. Like, you can change your roles and you can find what makes you happy.
It makes such a difference to help somebody else. I mean, it's way to go for you and your girlfriend doing that and pushing it beyond just, well, this didn't quite work, so let's do this, or this didn't quite work. Let's go out there, let's really help some people genuinely, for real. And that makes a massive difference. If enough of us do that, we can really change the world. And it's, like you say, it's a one conversation at a time. It's one life. There's some statistics that show that one mentor in a kid's life who's having a hard time makes a massive difference. Even if their home life is all screwed up, one person who cares about them, maybe meets with them at their school on a regular basis, takes an interest in them, can make a significant difference in their life. And anybody can do that. And anybody can do it. You and your girlfriend did, and go help out feeding people at a some sort of a place where food is provided for folks who need food. I know we've got places like that in our community, food pantries, and we've got a community garden that feeds people full meals in our city. Wherever you are, help out somebody, find out what the needs are in your community. And like you don't have to be a millionaire, you don't have to be some C-level person. You can help. And if you get your kids involved and pass on this legacy of service to your children.
I appreciate what you said, and what comes with it is I have this consulting firm. It's Edwards Consulting, and it's got 5 pillars. It's mental health, physical health, community service, philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships, whether that's personal, work, whatever that is.
I love those.
Yeah, because I realized that with the 5 pillars, we might not excel in all 5 of them. We can't get all 10s, but we can be a work in progress. And if we can work on that, then we can improve. And a lot of people I was talking to were just recent graduates or in college, and they go, community service philanthropy, probably a 0. And and it's so true, because you're so focused on other things.
Sure.
But I try to explain to everyone that literally it's literally $40 in 3 hours that make a difference. Like, I know people that go out and spend $40 on lunch or $40 anyway. And it's just such a minor amount of money, because something else we did was my girlfriend has a younger brother who's, at the time, he was like 8 or 9. Okay. And we went to the Goodwill store. We bought jackets. It's Florida. It gets a little cold sometimes. Not too cold, but we got jackets. And then we went to Publix and we bought like waters, bananas, all that. And we went by a homeless shelter and we provided them all like with all this stuff. And it was literally $40 worth of stuff. You just try to get the most bang for your buck. You get bread, you get this, you get that. And they are so grateful. And the funniest thing was that I thought we were helping them, but we were really helping us. We're helping ourselves. And the younger brother, he goes, Jordan, when are we going again? Because now he has that life experience of understanding what that is. So if you can provide that experience to anyone, it's way more impactful than, hey, let's watch TV for 2 hours.
The difference you made in his life at 8 or 9 and instilling that value in him and that joy. And like you said, you get more out of it than the people do. That's why it's always more blessed to give than to receive. And I tell people, even like say relating to your pillar of mental health, if you can, if the issues are milder, you need to get out of yourself, get out of your own head and help somebody else. And ironically, when you go help someone else, even though you don't feel like it, it helps your mental health. It helps your well-being to help somebody else.
Yeah. And I've seen that over and over and over again, because when you're so attached to the outcome, you might get disappointed. And then you just find ways to give. And giving could even be Venmoing. Like, it's so easy to give money nowadays. We can Venmo our friends $5, surprise, coffee on me. And it makes someone's day.
Yeah.
It's so minor. It's not even that they're going to
joy.
Exactly. And so what have you found with being a pastor, that like in the giving dynamic, how is that really? Because you have a huge family. You've had so many blessings, 9 grandchildren, 5, like you just got a lot of family, a lot of blessings. How do you find people? How do you instill those values?
Yeah, I really try to encourage people to take a first step. Like you're saying, there's some real simple things you could do to give, and to learn that being a good steward of what God's given to you, time, abilities, money, whatever it is, influence, makes such a difference in someone else's life. And we're want to have tried to instill that in our kids and now in our grandkids, that brings you value. And in our church, I try to encourage people. Sometimes people think, well, all that church wants is our money, because you give money to a church or a synagogue or whoever. And I'm like, hey, that's not it at all. Like, God doesn't need your money, really. He's got plenty. But it's for you. When you make a contribution to a good cause, to make a difference, it's so helpful for you. And I've had some people tell me it's like a second conversion. It's like I trusted in God, I trusted in Christ, but I really wouldn't part with my money. And somehow when I got generosity, when I got this giving idea, it freed me up. It's a way of, in the United States, we're so caught up in materialism. We try not to be, but it's, pretty much the whole world looks at the United States and realizes we're pretty caught up in material things. And how do you break yourself of that? Like, how do you get free? And one key way is to give things away, to give money away, to help someone else. And when you give, you free yourself from some of the constraints and chains of materialism.
100%. Have you read The Richest Man in Babylon? Have you heard of that book?
A long time ago. Yeah.
A long time ago. They have this principle. It's the 70-10-10-10. So 3 10s. That says that you live on 70%, you save 10%, you invest 10%, and then 10%, and he says this is the most important one, 10% you give away.
I love that.
And he goes, even if you are completely broke, can barely get by, then you adjust the percentages.
That's
you
right.
live off 89%, and maybe you give 1%.
That's right.
Or you give a 0.1%. And it's like, that means if you get $5,000 a month, you can give $500, that's 10%, or find a way to give $50. Find a way to give $5.
Right.
Whatever it may be, because it really opens up your heart and opens up to that abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset of, oh my God, we don't have enough. We're just getting by. We can't do this. We're struggling, blah, 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 blah. It opens the doors.
Yeah. Just even a beginning, give $1, $5. We taught our kids that when they had an allowance, which was tiny at the time. It's like, if you're getting $1 a week, give 10 cents and save 10 cents, like you said, and invest 10 cents, and 70 cents. And even at a small scale, that's still, the principle still applies. And then I've seen people who have more money than you need to live on it. And I went to this generosity conference. It kind of blew my mind. There were people giving away 50% of their income. There was one person giving away 90% of their income. Like, they had enough money in terms of their net worth that they really, they had a beautiful home, beautiful car. They're doing fine. And so of their new income, they were giving away 90%. I'm like, this is craziness. But their joy, like their face, the smile on their face and their joy in telling the story of, hey, and it wasn't like, oh, prideful, oh, I'm this great person. It was, hey, we were able to help these people and fund this thing and the other thing. And I'm like, I've never been to that level, but I think it'd be awfully cool to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at it reverse, right? So there's like the richest people in the world. A lot of them are signing the 99% pledge. Yeah. The 1% where you keep 1% and you donate 99. With like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, et cetera, et cetera. Why are they donating it? Because they don't there's only so much that you need to live. And part of it is, hey, it's good to give to good people. And especially when you see the impact, it's way more impactful than, hey, we donated $1,000 to this organization. We saw this and we didn't really understand it. I totally get that, because some of that, there's been some issues. But when you see the difference, it's drastic.
And like you said,
how can I help?
It starts simple. You're probably not a billionaire, I'm guessing. Maybe somebody listening is a billionaire, but hey, if you've got a few dollars, you can start there and give something to somebody, and it makes a difference. And I think that addresses some of the pillars of success of philanthropy, that of your 5 pillars. And, for me as a pastor and with this book, it's the spirituality pillar that
Absolutely.
that book really focuses on. And I find that's of your pillars, that one is really crucial to develop that. And a lot of times that's one that I have people tell me, yeah, I'm just not thinking about that right now. I go, well, you probably should.
It gets overlooked. And I do podcasts like this where we're going wide range because I want it to be a reminder that spirituality is important. And you don't have
Right.
to be Christian to read this book. Like,
No,
these are questions that anyone can read. And
I'm glad you
it's
said that,
important.
because I wrote the book for people who are not Christians. It's written to people who don't know the Bible, maybe hardly ever been in a church. And so you don't have to know anything about the Bible. You don't have to have any experience with religion or Christianity. It's written in everyday language. There are no Bible verses in the chapters. They're in footnotes, but it's written for like just everybody, whoever you are, if you're interested in these questions, and whether you are or not, these are questions, back to what we were saying is you really should answer these. I mean, to have a full life, to hit all 5 pillars that you've talked about, you really need to ask these questions. And it's going to take, if you use, some of the language of urgent and important, these are questions that are important, but they probably don't feel urgent. They're probably not urgent to you right now in terms of your daily life, but they're important. And what we don't know is, how urgent are they? Because we don't know when life's over for us, anybody. You don't know what's around the corner. So I actually would argue they're urgent and important, but for sure they're important.
I would agree 100% that they're definitely urgent, because it's not even when life ends, but it's when do we start living fully?
That's right.
When do we really start? Because for me, like, there's been many of times when I am sitting there like, am I helping? Is this purposeful? Is this important? And if you're not asking yourself bigger questions, then you're not going to make a bigger impact. And when we really ask ourselves these large questions of what is life about? What is the point
Right.
of this? Then it gets you started on, hey, I'm trying to do this so that I can help people when they want to do this. Like, I didn't just start this podcast. Like, I randomly started this podcast because I told someone, like, hey, we were actually in this Naples airport, and one of the guys was a POW, and I just wanted to hear a story. And I go, I have a podcast because I wanted to provide value to him. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And I put the record button and we just started talking. That was it.
That's
Meanwhile,
awesome.
we ended up coming a few weeks later and actually going to his house and recording it. But in reality, we don't really know when anything starts. The opportunities come to us and we have to take them for what they are and make the most of them.
And
And
I love that
yeah,
about you and your curiosity and eat with each guest. You don't know what I'm going to say. Yeah. You don't know what the next guest is going to say, but you're asking great questions. And I think that as you're listening to this podcast, it's like, well, I don't know why you happen to listen to this podcast. Maybe you do regularly. Maybe you just happened on it, or you just decided to listen to this one, but you didn't listen to the 3 before. I wonder why. Like,
yeah,
maybe there's a deeper reason. Maybe there's something that maybe God's trying to get your attention, and you're really supposed to pay attention to this podcast or this particular episode. I don't know. I don't know all that. I'm not God, but I do think it's worth asking the question and saying, okay, Jordan, you happen to have me on as a guest. This podcast happens to air at a certain time, and you happen to listen to it at this moment as you're listening. What is that? Maybe ask some deeper questions. Why am I
yeah,
listening to this podcast at this moment in my life on this day? What's going on in and around my life that I should be paying attention to?
yeah. And that's really profound, because the better questions we have to ask ourselves, the more deeper and more meaningful life that we produce. So uh, you got me asking the question, why am I talking to you today? Like, you
Yeah.
got me, what's coming on? What is supposed to change
I,
about me?
I honestly, Jordan, I think it's worth asking for you to say, okay, this Bruce Miller guy, I mean, he came, some email came across your desk and you had
Yeah,
multiple possible guests and you picked me to be here. And it's like, okay, I wonder what that has to do. What's God doing in your life? What questions do you need to ask? And I love that you're eager, they're open to that. Like you're going, yeah,
yeah,
let me do it,
yeah. No, absolutely. So, Bruce, where can people find your book? Where can people reach you? I'm going to put it all in the show notes.
Cool.
But I also want to note that I read some of the book, and it is, I'm not familiar with the Bible. Like, I read a little bit of the Bible, but I'm not super familiar with that. I'm not super familiar with any of this. It is a very easy read, and it's like we're having a conversation. So I would definitely recommend
that, because that's how I tried to write it. I pictured myself at a coffee shop, sitting across the table saying, "Hey, let's talk. Let's have a conversation." So the book is The 7 Big Questions with the number 7, Searching for God, Truth, and Purpose. It's on Amazon, and it's on most other retailers. I can't guarantee which bookstore has it, but you can find it on Barnes and Noble, in lots of places if you just Google it. And I have a website you could go to. It's brucebmiller.com. brucebmiller.com. You'd find that book, and you'd find other books I've written that could be of interest to you if you want to explore it. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. Like, seriously, you want to email me, you want to call me, text me, I would be glad to engage in a conversation. I mean, like you, Jordan, I'm interested in conversations and being a real person. And I'm honestly seriously open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes when we get into stages and we get into different areas, like Bruce is the senior pastor at this church, and sometimes that can be intimidating to go up to someone at that moment. But when it's a one-on-one dynamic, or you don't live in Texas or you're far away, but you have questions, Bruce wants to be that resource.
Sure. So you can find my email on my website. It's not like a hidden secret thing. I don't have I mean, I'll respond,
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll include that in the show notes too. And
sure.
Bruce, this has been phenomenal. Thank you.
Great, Jordan, man. It's been fun. I had no idea where the conversation would go, but I love your questions. I love your 5 pillars. And I'm just honored that you invited me to be on the show.
Absolutely.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there, and have a great day, and keep clocking in.